to our live by-election debate. We are streaming this on sunlive.co.nz. Now, don't remember to keep an eye on our site. It is going to be re-uploaded, so you can view it after tonight is over on our site. Now, today we have all of our candidates who are standing for the at-large seat on Tauranga City Council. So we've heard from 8 people so far in groups 1 and 2. They've had their debates on the issues which you have sent through to us over the past couple of weeks. They're also supported here tonight by some of their crew, so each candidate has brought along 2 people to support them, and they are in our premises here at number 1 The Strand, supporting their people. Give a big woot woot for your peoples. So right now we are jumping into group 3. Now I will give them a chance to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Gillian Cook, and I've got a background in high-stress jobs like being a driving instructor for 15 years, a journalist for print and radio, and in recent years with elder care. Hence, the platform that I'm standing on tonight is on behalf of elders. In residential homes, there's no appeal. Council currently has animal control, so they have regulations for them, health in food places, and I think that also parking regulations, that council could actually play a role for people to appeal to, because once somebody is in residential care, their families, nobody has anywhere to go to say, hey, look, I think something's wrong. We've been seeing things in the media lately that's just the tip of the iceberg. The residential carers facilities are being treated in poverty. They're understaffed, under-resourced, whereas the same owners are owning wealthy villages, making huge, mega millions of dollars. What I'm saying on my platform is our council can get smart on that too. Look at Auckland. I'd like you to zoom in on this. This is Auckland Council. Are selling units. They've got them North Auckland, South Auckland, West Auckland, East Auckland, all over Auckland, and they're getting in on the act. They are making money. They're providing it to mortgage-free people of modest incomes. Tauranga could be doing the same and making some money for the city. That is my platform. Over and out.
Thank you, Gillian.
Good evening. I'm Anne Pankhurst. I've been a councillor before, so I bring with me, I bring a lot of experience. I bring an understanding of governance. I understand what the city's about. I am with someone that will listen, and I'm somebody that cares. And frankly, I think we need to have that caring and listening happening again. It seems to me that recently the city has lost a little bit of its way. It's got huge problems around growth. On one hand, growth brings with it wonderful, wonderful opportunity, but it also brings an enormous amount of challenge. And you're seeing that in the rate rises, you're seeing that in the debt that the city needs to carry. I do care about what happens to youth in this city. I understand Gillian is talking about the elderly, but we also need to look at our future and where we see that happening. And what are we doing? What is the legacy that we are right now setting up for our youth so that they too can have a part in the city, that they too can be feeling welcomed, and that they will stay. So I'm a strong believer in amenity. I'm a strong believer in cultural amenity, sporting amenity, strong supporter of the tertiary sector that's been growing here, and actually having something that we can bring back our youth, that they will want to be here and want to stay and support the region.
Thank you for that. On to our next candidate.
Yes, hello, my name is David Tank. I'm the man in the white hat. That's my election gimmick. If you see me wandering around town, give a smile and a wave if you're after a living wage, because the wages in this town are too damn low, and they've been too damn low for too damn long, and we need to do something about it. Many of the social issues that we are talking about here today are a direct result of the poverty of income and the insecurity of work in our city. Now, with 20 candidates standing for this by-election, the numbers of turnout the number of people voting will be low, and the number of votes needed to win under a first-past-the-post is small. Now, we can scrap amongst ourselves for who you think is the best personality or the best one to fit a job for 14 months, or you can send a message to our council and to our community that the wages in this town are too damn low. So I would ask you, if you believe that's the case and you would like to get something done about it, that you tick tank in the postal vote and put it in the letterbox. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. Now we're going to kick into the questions that our readers have been asking us to ask you. And the first one, you brought this up, David. What 2 things would you propose in order to fix the growing issue of the vacant shops in Devonport Road?
Who first?
Any of you?
I've spent a lot of time on the Main Street Board, and while I agree that what I believe is council's role in that is that they need to set up an environment that actually allows for activity. I believe the CBD has to be at the top of the pile. It is our cultural centre. It is our centre. Beyond that, empty shops are actually the market force. Council's not in this business of making sure shops are filled. They're in the business of creating an environment where the market wants to be. And at the moment, that is not necessarily happening. I know that the city's going to have some huge changes in the next 5 years, and we need to be actually supporting the market and supporting the retailers and supporting the two-thirds
What does that mean? How?
And so I would actually say that we actually need to move beyond thinking that the council has a role in this, as they don't have a role in creating a better wage. Then that is not their role. Their role is to create environments
council-controlled
where
organisations have no employees that are paid less than $20.55 an hour, nor that any contractors that work for council are paid less than $20.55 an hour.
Thank you very much, David, for being rude and interrupting. So while I'm suggesting that we actually,
that was not true. The council
we are
can do
actually
something about it, and it is done around the country. Wellington is a living wage council. I believe Auckland is now. When central government is weak, local government steps up and takes a lead, and this is something that we can do locally.
Thank
with
you,
our
David.
council.
Gillian, your turn. I hope you get one.
Be specific and don't make claims that aren't the case, and I'll be good.
What creates vibrancy? People. You go to the Mount, it's vibrant. We've got people at the Mount and it's vibrant. So how do we get vibrancy in the CBD? I have even questioned, is that the right place to have a CBD? Is now a good time to actually question where should the CBD be? Should it be at the Mount because it's already happening there? I have heard people practically crying who have face-to-face contact with tourists saying how disgusted they are at our CBD. That person being very embarrassed to actually be in Tauranga. So how to make it vibrant? I would like to see it Europeanised. That is, shut off ends of the CBD, stop the cars, cover it up, make it feel like a mall, create entertainment on the actual waterfront where there are cars right now. There is lots of things that the council can be doing, and yes, it is their business. If we want people there, if we want vibrancy there, where are the signs to say this is actually the CBD? Because you can drive down Cameron Road and not even know there's one if you're a new person into the city. So there is a lot to do, and the vacant shops could be filled quite easily by creating the right environment.
David, I'll give you a chance to have a
Thank
comment,
you,
but I'll just let
I'll be very quick,
Anne go first and then you can have a turn.
Thank you very much. I'll finish what I was saying. So I agree that that we do need to create an environment, and council's role is to create that environment where people will want to be. And I do frankly think that the CBD is already established as an excellent CBD. Let's continue that. I really love all the outlying satellite places, but you need a place where all that major amenity sits, and that's the CBD.
David, you seem like you have some thoughts. Go to town.
Always on everything.
Go to town.
Look, when it comes to the Devonport Road shops, I do agree with Anne there. It's a matter of market forces, and if the landlords are not prepared to offer rents or rent holidays that are conducive to getting businesses in there so they can try their hand, well, that's at the landlord's discretion. If they're land banking in some obscure way for a greater profit, and it's something they could do and don't, well, then maybe council should be making some inquiries as to whether that is the case. A general vibrancy to the CBD, absolutely, and it's coming. The building of the university precinct and whatnot is coming along. When we get a new council building and a new forum down there, and the student population builds and a few more anchor tenants that use offices are attracted to our city, well, then it will boom. When I got home from Australia 5 years ago, it was pretty weak, it was pretty poor, and just by the redevelopment of the waterfront and those lovely little bronze statues and the diving boards and the steps, summer was fantastic down there, it was busy. So yes, we can encourage it, and perhaps if those shops have got zoning issues for some of the activities that might want to go in there now, we could look at that.
Gillian, you look like you have some thoughts. I'll let you...
Oh, it all just sounds a bit lame, really, frankly.
How so?
Well, there needs to be big stuff going on in the CBD. We know that. And I've already said it needs vibrancy. And the way to get vibrancy is people.
So you're proposing we have a party every week or something?
Every day, every moment, actually. Yeah, that's what vibrancy means. You go to Uptown Wellington.
No, I'm not saying it's not a bad idea.
Is that what Tauranga is? No, it's not. It can be creative.
Sure.
Positively.
Certainly, we could have a
Let's
lot more
not forget that at least 12 to 15,000 people come into the city every single day. There is already a huge number of people. What we don't have in there is a collection of really exciting things for people to do. It's not about necessarily having a party every day. We've started the process with the steps. Harry McCleary's phenomenal, but we do need to actually understand what council's role is. That's what we're standing for here. We're standing for council, not for telling people what to do.
We'll put this issue to rest just for now and truck along to the next
Just
question.
lastly, there is a reason why retailers are leaving the CBD.
Is that rates?
Parking.
Parking.
They're not getting the customers into their shops.
So parking is an issue in Tauranga. What do you think you can do to help with this issue?
I'll carry on then. Block off either side, make it pedestrian friendly, give it the atmosphere of an event. And the retailers will be happy, just as they are in the big malls, because people will be walking past. It's not the cars, it's not about cars. Get the cars out. Make multi-storied car parks either side of a blocked off CBDs so that the motorists are not having to walk too far. Have a limited amount of temporary parking for mobility access and for loading zones.
I agree that parking is an issue, but let's not forget that you need to pay the costs of parking. So I actually am a supporter of having parking rates. I do think we need more parking buildings. I disagree with council's policy that waits for 80% occupancy before we start to look at building new buildings. We need to be doing that much, much earlier. We're now in crisis. There is not enough parking space. And so in my opinion, we get those parking buildings up. We don't build them all. We've got enough malls. They're not actually successful. We need space, public space where people gather, that we have lovely green, bigger public areas in a city that actually encourage people to come into the city, encourage them to sit, encourage them to enjoy and stay longer. What you actually need is people staying longer, spending more and enjoying the environment. It is not necessarily a people-friendly environment right now. That is council's role, creating a people-friendly environment.
David, what are your thoughts?
Well, we're still on that same subject, are we? Are there any other questions? We can
Well,
cover
we
that.
can track
But I would
along.
say, yes, definitely, get rid of the cobblestones in a few areas and the judder bars. You drive downtown, the first time I came back after 20-odd years, and I drove down there and it was like... And they don't want me here. It was just too much. It was shutting down my enjoyment of driving through the place I grew up in, you know. And I know that a lot of the elderly have been very concerned about it ever since it happened because of the cobblestones and the danger and risk of slippage and falling. Well, yeah, cut back on the number of judder bars for a start.
Thank you all for your insight on that issue. Now, another one that has been brought up with us from readers. Do you support rate increases? If so, how much and who should be paying more rates, businesses or residents?
I'd really like to start on this one because I have a serious difference of opinion with the present council looking at a rate differential for business. I think that is hiding and disguising. By moving the UAGC to 15% is moving the cost into business, which assumes that all business can afford it. That is
Business has had an
actually
easy ride in the city for years.
that is actually a mistake to assume that, because those business owners are, first of all, a ratepayer at home. The more rates you push on business, the less you're going to have them in the city, because they cannot afford to. If you're going to look at rates on businesses, you need to look at all businesses across the city, including those that are working out of home, or the Airbnbs, all of the people that have one or two people at home. It is not a fair rate. Now, to the question of the rates, I actually think that the reason we have high rates this year is there's been an artificial cap on the rates for the last 10 or 12 years. This is really hitting home now. The fact that you haven't kept the rates running with growth and been able to manage that and look to what a growing city needs means that this generation and the next are going to be hit with high rate raises. I'm sorry, it's a really hard and unpalatable discussion, but it's a fact.
We are relying too much on rates when we could be actually creating income from what I've suggested, which is make use of the land we've got, build buildings that can be sold, make profit instead of debt, and then we can talk about the rates. I would certainly like to see rates capped, but to be going into more debt all the time and just not running operations in a way that you would not do your household by going into more and more debt every year. It's all related. Rates and businesses, I think, perhaps could be paying a little bit more, but not much. We need to encourage business here to do well. If they're paying too many rates, that's a disincentive to do well. So let's not make it too unfair, reasonably equitable, not too much of an increase every year.
Are you aware that the debt is all mostly infrastructure? It's not running costs that has caused the debt, it's infrastructure. It's building the infrastructure to cope with the constant population growth of our city since Adam was a boy.
Thank you, but who sets the rates on that, on the infrastructure? It's the council's decision to charge what they charge. If they're not charging enough, then put it up.
Of a council budget and council debt with a household
So, David,
budget
tell
and
us your
household
view
debt.
on what rates are, because that's actually
Not
what's
the same
interesting.
thing. Well, thank you. Absolutely. Bringing Tauranga into alignment with National's practice in regard to the balance between business rating and residential rating is pretty standard. That is how it is done. That Tauranga has had a structure which has been out of sorts with the rest of the country and pretty much general practice around the planet for many, many years is not something in its favour. Okay, now you asked the question, I'll complete my answer, thank you. Now,
I can't
of that
interrupt, but you
40% increase that is mooted, I would be picking that it's something of an ambit claim, and as we get into it on council and go through it line by line, there'll be cuts and savings that can be made. Because you always start with something of a large claim because you know you're going to lose some things. Now, in regard to the percentage that they claim will be the increase in rates for residences over the next few years, it's something like 8%. I think that that'll be the top end, but at the same time, that is a good thing because the vast majority of that rate increase is going into resilience funds. It's going into ensuring that we won't have heart attacks and sudden impositions of surcharges when half of Otomoto falls over because of an extreme weather event and flood.
Can I correct you, David, because the resilient fund is actually going to be a targeted rate. The business community already pays targeted rates. Yep. They'll pay it on resilience. They'll pay it on other things. And this is the problem. I would
suggest to you that having that now will give certainty to what our rate rises will be over the next 10 years. Whereas if we try and chip and cheat and not get ahead of the curve, we will have shocks to our system. And if there's one thing about financial planning over the time frame is to know with certainty what you're going to have to pay. This is probably a little bit more fat than perhaps is needed, and we can look at that, but at the same time, it's better that we put some fat in the system now.
Thank you. Gillian, did you have anything else to say?
No, I just repeat what I said. Okay. Don't rely on rates. Let's start looking at how to make some money.
Thank you all for that.
We can do that too with a conference centre up with the museum.
Next question on the museum. Do you support the new museum in the short term and why?
Would you like me to start? Or
Feel free.
I grew up going to the Tauranga Historic Village and I miss it But I know time moves on, and my understanding of museums and what they are in the modern world is quite different to what that was, and it'll always be one of my fondest memories of Tauranga is going to that museum. I am a firm advocate for having a museum. I think we are robbing our children by not providing one and giving them a sense of the history of this place and an opportunity to interact with it. That was enormously valuable to me, and I think to save a few dollars now is to rob them, and that is something that as a community we shouldn't even countenance. Now, for a location, Cliff Road, with the history of Te Papa, as to my mind, as important was Waitangi and Parihaka in the history of our nation, and it's a little understood history, something again because of Tauranga's habit of knocking down the old and putting up something crappy that can make a quick buck. A lot of our history has been lost, but that is a very, very important part in the history of human colonisation of these islands. And I think that not only should we have the museum there, but we should add a conference centre there that's an iconic, symbolic building in the shape of a giant glass waka that can act as with a meeting chamber that can also act as a backup parliament for should the earthquake take out Wellington. That would provide additional funds from central government.
Yeah, I think you're getting a bit
It would
carried
provide
away,
it would provide a buy-in from private enterprise to manage the conference centre through purchasing a management contract, and the synergy of that conference centre with the museum would get visitor numbers up in an iconic building, and probably allow it to run at a profit. Now, you can say you're getting a bit carried away. That is a vision for this city with a beautiful building that would make us all proud.
Thank you for that, David.
World famous.
Thank you.
David, that's a great dream, but I think you'd need
I
to
got
flatten
a car
half.
shot out past
You'd
Mars, Gillian.
You'd need to flatten half the
Big things
CBD
can
to put
happen.
that big dream in there.
Big things can happen.
But where I'd actually like to share part of that dream, because I would like to see all the council facilities together. That is the council itself, the council services, the library, the art gallery, all together.
I could tell you stories of the history of that library.
And I don't necessarily go with the Cliff Road being. I think it's wonderful that iwi have come to the party, in fact, encouraging that site. And that's very unique and quite wonderful that offer is there. And I can see why the council would accept it as well. It's a great solution in many ways, especially the way it's been offered with the funding and support that can be got. But I still say that we're not. I would like to see a combined library museum or art museum facility sooner rather than later, cheaper rather than later. Yes, we do want long term, but hey, we're in strife with our debt. So let's address the first issue, which is make some more money first, hey?
And what do you think?
So, thank you. I support a museum. I have serious concerns about the location in Cliff Road. I think that there is a number of challenges ahead for the siting in Cliff Road. First of all are the residents that are located there. This is one of the few character areas left in the city, and we are potentially going to put a large building right on top of their doorstep. It's been mentioned already that there's access issues, there's a whole series of problems. I am a strong believer in co-locating museums and libraries for that curatorial service at the back end that can save you some money. So while I support a museum, it is not at any cost. We have to be sensible and rational about this, and the costs that will be incurred in the next 2 to 3 years simply to get the planning is going to add, as exactly as Bill Faulkner said, costs are ratcheting up. I would really like to see that the museum is actually re-evaluated. My other concern is that if we go down the road of Cliff Road and we find out in 3 years after it's been in the Environment Court, and almost certainly it will be, that we actually don't have any site. And that is a serious risk that is being run right now. We need to be running concurrent processes so we don't lose any other opportunity for a site, for a museum in the near future, but just not at any cost. We do need to be looking at our whole resilience around sustainability. Are we putting enough money as a council into that? So I actually think we need to look at those two things very seriously.
Thank you for that. Any last thoughts on this topic?
cheap is not necessarily sensible when it comes to...
I didn't
fit for
actually
purpose.
suggest cheap. I suggested not at
I would
any
also
cost.
suggest to you that a hybrid of a library and a museum in the downtown area would be god-awful. Neither of them would end... There'd be too many compromises between the two structures, and neither of them would end up being fit for purpose and would last. The current library in there required major remedial work almost from the day it was built, and that was done with that same tauranga attitude of, let's do it cheap. Oh, we've got too many things.
I don't disagree with the principle of don't do it cheaply, but I do disagree with putting a large building in a high residential, close residential character area and taking away the last of the high-level green space in the city. That is one of the last pieces of green space that can be used by the public as green space, not building, not 68 car parks, not buses coming and going. It's just not the location for it.
Te Whare. That's a huge amount of high green space just on the other side of the beginning of Cameron Road, just in Te Papa. There's lots of it there. On that side of the museum and a conference centre, it would be open and there would be green space. You wouldn't lose that.
The conference space is not going to sit up there because it is even bigger than the museum floorage.
There's a lot more room up there than just the site we're proposing for the museum.
We're going to have to put the questions to a rest for this group. But we would like to hear from you guys. So right now what I want to do is bring you up to the front. You can introduce yourselves and you can tell us why you are standing for council.
I thought we'd just done that.
Gillian, you're now.
This position requires somebody who will, listen to the options being presented, but look for other options that are not being presented. In the case of the selling of the community housing, one of the options was not put to us. The only option was to either to sell it or not to sell it, and that community housing could not get the what do you call it when they get the subsidiary? An arm's length subsidiary could be provided by the council and they could sustain the community housing. But there's also land there that more housing could be built on and sold for profit. So there are ways of making money that the council could get in on that other councils are doing.
Thank you for that, Gillian. And now we have Anne.
Hi, Anne Pankhurst. Vote for me, I do bring experience. I have a real concern in the city that we are not unlocking the community investment potential that sits in behind. We're expecting council to carry the burden. I have heard tonight that it's everybody else's role but not council's, but there is opportunity for this city to unlock community investment. There's a number of large trusts that can be used to unlock that potential and I think we should be doing it. I think that in this case we need to be looking at other options to help the city. I do believe in debt because it's intergenerational. You can't expect today's ratepayer to pay for things that will last 10, 20, 100 years. Vote for me, I bring experience, I bring knowledge, and I will bring a listening ear.
Thank you for that, Anne. And last but not least, we have David.
David Tank. Yes, Cameron? As I said at the beginning, I would like you to vote for a living wage, and you can do that by my candidacy. At the same time, I would hope, from what you've just witnessed, that you will get the impression that not only am I knowledgeable and understanding of the history of this city, I also don't take any crap. I can assure you that if I'm on that council for the 14 months before the general, you will have plenty of time to try me out and see whether I can help keep the bastards honest. Because by God, I'm going to give it a damn good crack. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. And that